So I grew up playing Telecasters. This right here is literally the first ever picture of me with a guitar. I think I'd started playing guitar maybe 2 months before this photo was taken. That guitar right there is actually this guitar right here, this Telecaster. It's obviously gone through a few different iterations over the years, but it's the same guitar. I could scroll through so many pictures over the last 18 years of me playing guitar, and while the haircuts have changed quite a lot over those 18 years, one thing that has remained pretty constant is I'm often holding a Telecaster. That body shape is more a part of me and my journey than any other instrument, and I can trace back specific things that I do technique-wise to things that I learned growing up playing a Telecaster. My right hand, for example, is all from playing a Telecaster and having to work around and get the best out of this type of guitar. But I think maybe I've lost my way over the last couple of years. I've kind of lost sight of my true roots. I had a big Strat phase, and now currently I'm exploring the world of humbuckers and I guess Kalamazoo inspired instruments. But this guitar right here, the Haynes guitar's Fidelity, has transported me right back to my roots, and it's been really eye-opening to look inwards on my guitar journey, I guess. And yeah, it's been emotional at times as well. So if you like the video so far, please give it a like and also subscribe to the channel. I think something like 90% of you who regularly watch my videos are not subscribed. So just think about that. That if those 90% of people subscribe to my channel, that would be absolutely amazing. Before we get into the specifics of this beautiful Haynes guitar, I want to touch a bit more on those things that I mentioned about how T-types have influenced my playing and maybe how they could influence your playing as well. They really have steered my journey as a guitar player, and you will often hear people say that if you can play a Tele, then you can play any guitar. And while that does maybe seem like a silly thing to say because at the end of the day they all have the same notes, I do think there's some truth in that. I mentioned at the start that my right hand technique is all from learning how to play guitar on a Telecaster. The way you can thrash a Telecaster is like no other guitar, in my opinion. If you played with the same intensity on a Les Paul or another guitar with a shorter scale length, then you'd go out of tune pretty fast. Similarly with the Strats, they kind of feel a little delicate or maybe a little fiddly to play in that sort of way. Not a Telecaster though. They kind of have a way of dealing with everything that you put into them, and that includes dialing it back dynamically as well. Teles are almost like a blank canvas, and I think that's because they are so simple in design and in nature. And I think if you decide to spend any sort of serious time playing a Telecaster, it will change you as a guitar player forever. and possibly for the better. So let's hear this Haynes guitar, and then when we come back, we'll chat a bit more about the specifics. Neil Haynes of Haynes Guitars comes from a background of woodworking, cabinet making, and repairing vintage instruments. He's clearly a very skilled craftsman, and him and his small team are building really high-end guitars out of Oxfordshire here in the UK, taking all the best bits from those vintage instruments that he's kind of been repairing to create his own designs by hopefully ironing out some of those quirks that you get with those old instruments. There are a handful of different models in his range, but this, the T-type, is called the Fidelity. It's immediately familiar to a Telecaster player like myself, but has a few really interesting changes, a few really interesting components and materials that make it really special. It's also evidently high-end, and that kind of high-end nature comes through first of all in the choice of woods. First of all, the body wood is American alder, a really nice piece of resonant wood, but also with some really nice, well-considered contours compared to a traditional slab telly body. It's also not too light, not too heavy. It's a really good sort of in-between weight. And now the neck. The neck, my word, is kind of, it's probably the highlight of this guitar, and it's something I've heard a lot about across Haynes' other guitars. He really has a way of making beautiful, beautiful necks. So this one is a one-piece mahogany neck finished in this really subtle but really beautiful sunburst. This was actually the first thing I noticed about this guitar when I picked it up, and immediately I knew that this was something special. The fretboard wood on this guitar is a beautifully thick AAA piece of Bacote? I don't know how to say that. It's a custom option for this guitar, and it's a really, really stunning piece of wood. The figuring is really impressive. I've never heard of that wood, but I like it a lot. Along with that fretboard wood, we have really intricate abalone inlays that are of British falling leaves. They're absolutely beautiful. Overall, the neck is just absolutely stunning. It's a beautiful, beautiful example of craftsmanship. We have a Graphtec nut, locking tuners, and 2 carbon fiber truss rods, so you can be rest assured that the neck and your tuning is not going to go anywhere. I've barely had to tune this guitar at all since it's been in my possession. Moving on to the pickups. Now, Haynes winds his own pickups, and we've got a kind of an interesting but still traditional choice of pickups here. We have his classic Tele bridge pickup, which is great, combined with a vintage inspired P90. The Pearl Jam and Eddie Vedder fan inside of me is loving this combination of pickups. Both are superb and provide everything you could want from a great Tele set: spank, punch, clarity, dynamics, and overall versatility. I'm actually one of those weirdos who's always really liked a Tele single coil neck pickup, you know, the lipstick ones. I've always really liked them, but the decision to put a P90 in the neck here is a really nice decision, and it provides more individuality to the tones as a whole. In that vein of being a bit more individual, interestingly enough, the middle position as well is wired out of phase for that really honky, hollow sound. At first, I wasn't sure about this, if I'm completely honest, but after spending some time with it, I've kind of come round to it, especially when you put on some gain or even a fuzz pedal. Cuts through a mix so well, having that really honky sound that just is like a punch in the face. It's so cool. Nothing else fancy going on with the switching here, which is my preference when it comes to T-types. This one is available at Leo in Teds here in the UK, which I'll link down below. Big thanks to Tim and Neil Haynes for letting me have a whirl on this thing. As I said, it's kind of made me reflect on the last 18 years of a guitar player, where I've come from, where I am now, but also where I'm going in the next 18 years and what direction I want to go in with my guitar playing, with my guitar choices. All I know is that there does need to be another Telecaster in my life at some point, and a Haynes Fidelity is currently a front runner. My OG Telecaster has been in my family since before I started playing guitar. It's been through a lot with me. You know, I learned how to play on this thing. I played my first gigs with this guitar. I wrote my first songs with this guitar, and I actually got my music degree with this guitar. And I kind of feel like I've squeezed everything that I can out of it. And it's probably deserved of a good rest now.